Okay, that's enough being uncomfortable. I'm at the University of Minnesota today for a workshop, and you were here, no doubt wishing that I was here with you. And so this little movie version of myself is a lot the same as me being here, without the incredible odor, which usually emanates from me. So if you want to just take a moment and close your eyes and just kind of reflect back to that inspiring aroma, because smells are one of the best triggers of memory. So if you want to kind of just take a few minutes to just, there's probably a little residual Kruger smell in the room. So if you want to just kind of soak that up, you're certainly welcome to. Okay. Enough of my incredible aroma. We're going to be talking pages 100 to 120, so if you could just open up your books now, I would appreciate that. So around this time, Tea Cake has been hanging out with Janie, and this is the first time that Janie's ever been really in love with the guy that she's with. Obviously, she had no feelings for Logan, right? Because Nanny kind of forced her into marrying him. And then Joe was a better alternative and comparatively better looking and offered her comparatively better treatment. But he was so focused on his career and focused on building up the town and really just making a name for himself that he wasn't really what Janie was looking for either. So when Tea Cake shows up, he's about 10, 11 years younger than Janie is. And a lot of the town has a lot of things to say about this. Because he's got a little bit of a bad reputation, and the way the town knows Janie is as the mayor's wife. All right, we're going to get into this a little bit later in this section, but what Phoebe and the rest of the town didn't know is that Joe made Janie seem like she was above everybody else. He was the one that wouldn't let her hang out on the porch and tell stories and be able to, hang out with the town and talk and play checkers and all these things. And the town thought it was because Janie thought that she was better than them and just didn't want to do these things herself. But really, it was Joe who prevented her from doing these things. Okay, so go on. Go to page 103. And on page 103, it said, the next night when she mounted her steps, Tea Cake was there before her, sitting on the porch in the dark. He had a string of fresh-caught trout for a present. In my big master's essay I wrote on this, I talked about fishing in the book. When characters fish with Janie and teach Janie how to fish, she ends up much happier. And there'll be a number of instances where this starts to come up. But when food is brought to her, particularly fish, things are not as good, and when she's kind of catching fish for herself, and you can see some biblical overtones with that idea. We'll get back into that. So then it said on page 103, I've got some romantic dating advice for you now. It said, the sounds lulled Janie to soft slumber, and she woke up with Tea Cake combing her hair and scratching the dandruff from her scalp, and made her more comfortable and drowsy. Now, she fell asleep, and she woke up to Tea Cake kind of combing her hair and picking the dandruff off. So, dating advice for you is this, problems coming up. So you're snuggled up with your, cute little significant little boyfriend or girlfriend, snuggle up on the couch, and you do one of these, and you put your arm around them, except then instead of just having your arm around their shoulder, you feel around, you pull some, if there's any dandruff, and then pop in your mouth. Now, this will accomplish several things between you and your significant other. One, it will show you how much they mean to you, right? That you're willing to eat their dandruff, which is also recycling. But two, it's going to make them less dandruffy. So it's a win-win for everybody. Anyway, and it also relates back to Joe. A lot of the things that Tea Cake does and says and descriptions of him oftentimes relate back to things that other characters said to Janie about the type of guy she wants. Right, and the type of guy that he is. And if you remember back to Joe, when he made Janie tie her hair up and wouldn't let anybody see it because Creeper went like that to the bottom of her braid, remember? This is the first kind of intimate physical contact that they have between each other. And it's him kind of combing her hair. Going on a little bit. And Tea Cake and Janie are still talking, and Tea Cake generally is a very smooth character. When we watch the Tea Cake section in the movie, I feel like most of the actors and actresses that get to play these roles are good. They do a good job. I think Janie's good, Logan's good, Nanny's good, Coker and Hicks are, a lot of these characters are good. Tea Cake's the only exception to this. He looks the way Tea Cake should look. He's a good-looking dude, but Tea Cake in the book is very smooth with the ladies, but he is by being very goofy and silly. Like, he's very playfully flirtatious, and Tea Cake in the movie is just like, hey, Jenny, And then he doesn't really like say much after that. He kind of, that's kind of how he talks. And he doesn't really tell jokes, and he doesn't really laugh, which seems to be off character. But that's just me. Anyway, on page 105, she starts to bring up the idea that she's a lot older than he is, and shouldn't this bother him? It said, anyhow, from what you told me when we were back there in the kitchen, I'm nearly 12 years older than you. I done thought about all about that and tried to struggle against it, but it don't do me no good. The thought of my youngness don't satisfy me like your presence do. Makes a whole heap of difference with most folks, tea cake. Things like that got a whole lot to do with convenience, but ain't got nothing to do with love, which is a really good line. And he's basically saying, I don't care what anybody else thinks, right? It would be more convenient for us if we were the same age as we get older, assuming we're going to spend time together. But that doesn't matter, right? Going on. And on page 106, this is where Tea Cake is starting to be the type of guy that Janie envisioned. If we go back to the pear tree scene in the beginning, not specifically what was going on under the pear tree, but what that symbolically came to represent about this kind of passionate, loving relationship that Janie wants. It said, we get some kind of references to that. It said, he looked like the love thoughts of women. He could be a bee to her blossom, a pear tree blossom in the spring. He seemed to be crushing scent out of the world with his footsteps, crushing aromatic herbs with every step he took. Spices hung around him. He was a glance from God. So this is exactly the type of guy she's wanted. Now, the upside to this is that she's happy and she's getting a loving relationship and all this stuff that she's really wanted. The downside to being in love is that you're kind of hanging yourself out to dry in a lot of ways, right? It said on page 108, in the cool of the afternoon, the fiend from hell specifically sent to lovers arrived in Janie's ear. Doubt. All the fears that circumstance could provide and the heart could feel attacked her on every side. This was a new sensation for her, but no less excruciating. If only Tea Cake would make her certain. He did not return that night nor the next, so she plunged into the abyss and descended to the ninth darkness where light had never been. So, what Janie's worried about is she's never had a strong feelings of love for her husband, right? And so she's had no cause to feel doubt. But I think inherent in falling in love with somebody is also doubt, right? Because if you're putting that level of feeling into a relationship with somebody, there's a lot of trust there, there's a lot of expectation, there's a lot of strong feelings. And if that person lets you down, there's a great deal of pain involved with that she would not have felt with previous husbands, right? If she was worried about something happening with Logan, or Logan going around with somebody else, or Logan not being honest with her, she probably wouldn't have cared all that much, right? And same thing with Joe. But Tea Cake is the first person that she's actually had strong feelings for, and so this becomes a bigger deal for her. Going on to chapter 12, as they start to go around together on chapter 12, the town is scandalized by this, right? Because as I said in the beginning, they only know her as Mrs. Mayer, very prim, very proper. She's pretty, and she just kind of does her own thing and is above everybody else. But Tea Cake takes her to do all this stuff. It was after the picnic that the town began to notice things and got mad. Tea Cake and Mrs. Mayer Starks. All the men that she could get, and fooling around with somebody like Tea Cake, another thing. Joe Starks hadn't been dead but 9 months, and here she goes sashaying off to the park in pink linen. Done quit attending church like she used to. Gone off to Sanford in a car with Tea Cake and all dressed up in blue. It was a shame. Done took to wearing high heel slippers and a $10 hat, looking like some young girl always in blue because Tea Cake told her to wear it. So if you're looking on page 110 and you just look at the narrator, this is another one of those times when the narrator kind of goes down into another character's voice. And you can see that this is what the town is thinking about this, right? Remember when she walked back in the town in the beginning of the book and they were all kind of gossiping about her and saying all this stuff? It's the same type of thing here. Poor Joe Starks, but he turns over in his grave every day. Tea Cake and Janie gone hunting. Tea Cake and Janie gone fishing. Tea Cake and Janie gone to Orlando to the movies. Tea Cake and Janie gone to a dance. Tea Cake making flower beds in Janie's yard and seeing the garden for her. All those signs of possession. Right now, with Joe, it really was signs of possession, things he would purchase her. He made her wear the fancy dress instead of the dress that her friends made her to show the town that she was his. It's kind of like marking your territory, right? Minus the urinating on somebody, which is gross. But also that involves hickeys too. Hickeys is a way of marking your territory. Say no to hickeys. Forever. If you feel a hickey may be in process, say stop, danger. Back to our regularly scheduled book. Anyway, Phoebe, Sam Watson said one night as he got into bed, I believe your buddy's all tied up with that Tea Cake. Didn't believe it at first. Now, if you notice who's kind of talking to Phoebe about her friend, it's Sam Watson, right? And Sam was the one that I kind of set this up as a warning from Janie to Phoebe. They only know, Sam knows Joe as the mayor. Phoebe knows Janie as the mayor's wife. and they both really look up to them, right? And you can see that Sam kind of getting angry because he feels like Janie is wasting what Joe had earned through his hard work. And he says to Phoebe like, you better sense into her things, then got TK can't do nothing but help her spend what she got. I reckon that's what he's after, throwing away Joe Stark's word hard to get after. Now, he's saying all these hints, and Janie is going to go talk to Phoebe about it. But this is where Janie finally admits to Phoebe what the real deal with their relationship was in the town. Remember? And if you remember in the beginning, before Janie started to tell her whole story, she said, the story won't matter if I don't give you the understanding to go along with it. And she gave the comparison between the mink skin and the raccoon skin. This is where we start to understand the difference. And Phoebe said, Janie, everyone's talking about how that tea cake is dragging you around to places you ain't used to. Baseball games and hunting and fishing. He didn't know you're used to more high-time crowd than that. You always did class off. Class off would be, I'm better than you and above you, and so I'm not going to hang out with people who have less than I do. And then Janie responds, Jody classed me off. I didn't. Now Phoebe, tea cake ain't dragging me off nowhere I didn't want to go. I always did want to get round a whole heap, but Jody wouldn't allow me to. When I wasn't in the store, he wanted me to just sit there with folded hands and sit there. And I'd sit there with the walls creeping up on me and squeezing all the life out of me. Phoebe, these educated women got a heap of things to sit down and consider. Somebody done told them what to sit down for. Nobody ain't told poor me, so sitting still worries me. I wants to utilize myself all over. So she basically said Joe was the one who did it, right? Joe was the one who made me be better than everybody else. And it wasn't my doing, right? I always wanted to go to the baseball game and go hunting and go fishing and go to the picnic and do all this fun stuff, but he just wouldn't let me. Okay, so she kind of hints at Phoebe that she might get married to Tea Cake, and Phoebe is not down with that. Okay, now as we start chapter 13, we get a little warning, right? And a lot of the people in the town were talking about a woman named Annie Tyler, okay? And Annie Tyler, Mrs. Tyler was, it said on page 118, way later in the morning, the thought of Annie Tyler and Hooflung came to pay her a visit. Annie Tyler was 52, she'd been left a widow with a good home and insurance money. Mrs. Tyler, with her dyed hair, newly straightened and newly uncomfortable false front teeth, leathery skin blotchy with powder in her giggle, her love affairs with boys in their late teens, early 20s, all of whom she spent her money on suits of clothes, shoes, watches, things like that, and how they all left her as soon as their wants were satisfied. Then, when her ready cash was gone, had come Hooflung to denounce his predecessor as a scoundrel and took up the house himself. So this is a warning, because Annie Tyler was an older woman who husband had passed away, and she started running around with younger guys, as Janie is doing, right? And what the warning is that Janie is going to end up just like Annie Tyler. Annie Tyler ran off with these guys, and they would use her for her money, take all that they could get, and then they'd leave her with nothing, right? And this is what the town thinks, because this is where the town sees Janie running off with Tea Cake, right at the end of this chapter. And they run off to get married, right? And Janie's running off in her fancy clothes to meet up with this guy, and they expect that it's going to be a situation just like what happened with Annie Tyler, where she ran off with a younger guy in her fancy clothes and came back with nothing, right? And so if you remember at the beginning of the book, which is actually the end of the book, when Janie comes walking back into town wearing overalls and bare feet, they think they know what happened. They don't. We'll find that out later, but they think that exactly what they thought was going to happen did happen. That Tea Cake was just using her for money, that he wasn't really interested in her, and that once he got her money, then he would leave her. And so, like I said, when she comes back into town, that seems to confirm their suspicions. It's just, if you remember Janie's reaction to the town when she got back, she doesn't care at all, right? Because she knows the truth, and we will find out the truth later. So, thank you for your attention. Now, you're going to read for the rest of the period, you're going to read up page 120 to 140 for tomorrow. We will have a quiz. And that is it. Thank you. Bye.